Today in our readings, we see here in Isaiah, God proclaiming this. In that day, the remnant of Israel, the survivors of Jacob, will no longer rely on him who struck them down, but will truly rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. A remnant will return. A remnant of Jacob will return to the mighty God. Though your people be like the sand by the sea, Israel, only a remnant will return. Destruction has been decreed, overwhelming and righteous. The Lord, the Lord Almighty, will carry out the destruction decreed upon the whole land. Now, there are a lot of Christians who think that they're part of this remnant. They use the imagery of the remnant of Israel, the fact that Israel is going to suffer because they will end up relying on the Assyrians. And God then prophesies that you will no longer rely on him who destroys you, because the Assyrians will turn against the Judeans. You will no longer rely on worldly means only, but you will rely on me, and yet there will be much destruction and suffering between now and then, but I will preserve a remnant. I will preserve a small, select group of you who will return to me. And this happens. This is borne out by the history of the Jewish people. There are many Catholics who apply this to the Catholic Church. They say, well, so many people have turned away from God, and the Catholic Church has become so corrupt and so modernized and so worldly, and it doesn't really feed us anymore spiritually. Therefore, we are the remnant. A remnant will survive. There will be a kind of apostasy, a worldwide turning from faith within the church, but we, the true ones, will survive. Well, maybe, but I mean, you'll also notice that people who are really big on hell always assume that they're not the ones who will be going there. And I think to take this remnant theology, which is there in Scripture, and to rely upon it too much always is a mistake made by people who presume that they are among the remnant. But that may not be the case. Not only that, this remnant may be, well, the story may be a bit shaky. For instance, if we look at 2 Timothy, this is one of my favorite passages. At the top there, the King James Version, Paul says to Timothy, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but having itching ears, they shall heap to themselves teachers in accordance with their own lusts." But this applies to us. This isn't just other people and us saying, oh, those people, they don't like sound doctrine. They just want their teachers to tell them what they want to hear. Well, it's human nature. And one of the things we want to hear is we're among the sanctified already. We're going to be part of this tremendous and wonderful and holy remnant in the Catholic Church that remains true to God when the rest of the world falls away. And also, they talk about Pope Benedict XVI, who, when he was still Cardinal Ratzinger, used to talk about such things. They will often quote this passage. This is Cardinal Ratzinger before he was Pope Benedict. "From the crisis of today, the church of tomorrow will emerge, a church that has lost much. She will become small and will have to start afresh, more or less from the beginning. She will no longer be able to inhabit many of the edifices she built in prosperity. As the number of her adherents diminishes, so it will lose many of her social privileges." Now, he's talking about a remnant, but he's talking about a future church that's made up of people who are true to God, and yet it's a church that has been shorn of and stripped of power in the world, political standing. In much the same way, this also happened to the Israelites when they returned from exile. The remnant who came back to rebuild the temple that the Assyrians end up destroying are the ones who have to work through the difficulties and for whom it is not easy. So I think many of us can be a bit glib if we say, well, I'm true to God. I'm going to be true. I'm going to be in the remnant. And all those other people, they'll probably end up in hell. And I hate it when preachers don't mention hell because I know lots of people who are going there. In fact, let's look at one more thing and then I'll let you guys go. And that is, if we go back to these quotations from Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, and I got to get this so that you can actually read it. The future of the church can and will issue from those whose roots are deep and who live from the pure fullness of their faith. That's the remnant. It will not issue from those who accommodate themselves merely to the passing moment, or from those who merely criticize others and assume that they themselves are infallible measuring rods. Nor will it issue from those who take the easier road, who sidestep the passion of faith, declaring false and obsolete, tyrannous and legalistic, all that makes demands upon men that hurts them and compels them to sacrifice themselves. To put it more positively, the future of the church, once again, as always, will be reshaped by saints. He's saying, first of all, don't try to accommodate yourself to the passing moment, including, I would say, the passing moment in politics and world affairs and power plays. Don't assume that you yourself are an infallible measuring rod. And don't take the easier road and sidestep the passion of faith, saying that what the church teaches and asks of men and women is too demanding and hurts them and compels them to sacrifice themselves. And we don't want that. We want something easier. We don't like the cross. No, the people who will compose the remnant and who will be members of this smaller future church will be, in effect, saints, not people criticizing others, thinking of themselves as beyond reproach and infallible, not those trying to avoid the demands of the cross. And in many ways, those who are going to realize that the future church is not going to be what it was, not a political force in the world anymore, not a force that can win, not a force that has, as it was at one time, there were lands. The church was a secular organization that had lands and armies and that was involved in all kinds of complex worldly politics and power plays. That won't be the future church, according to Pope Benedict. And if there is a remnant, it will be a remnant truer to the spirit of the true church. And people will look at us and they will say, what do these people have that I don't? In fact, there's one final quote here that I've got to share, and then I'm shutting everything down. And it is this: men in a totally planned world will find themselves unspeakably lonely. If they have completely lost sight of God, they will feel the whole horror of their poverty. Then they will discover the little flock of believers as something wholly new. They will discover it as a hope that is meant for them, an answer for which they have always been searching in secret. I think that's true remnant theology, and not something that merely scratches our itching ears, as St. Paul would say.